Good evening, it's 8 o'clock. The top headlines tonight. Midnight curbs for arrivals from nearly 60 nations from tonight. Airports get ready with new holding and testing centres. The new SOP is test, wait for your result at the airport and then quarantine at home or a hotel if you're from an at-risk nation. No Omicron case found in India so far, the Health Minister tells Parliament. The CEO of the Serum Institute, Adar Poonawalla's exclusive interview to NDTV says we are producing more vaccines than we can use, have more than enough stock for booster shots and can produce an Omicron booster dose soon. Tracking Omicron, the S factor in RT-PCR test, NDTV reports of inside Mumbai's latest genome sequencing lab meant for international travellers who test COVID positive and are from at-risk nations. India's latest GDP numbers out for quarter 2 of the financial year 22. The GDP is at 8.4% for this quarter versus negative 7.4% last year, and growth in all key sectors this year compared to last year. The finance minister says India is working on a new crypto bill. She says that no advertising of crypto has been banned, added that the risk of cryptocurrency in the wrong hands is being monitored. Mamata Banerjee's national game plan continues. Now meetings in Maharashtra. She visits the Siddhivinayak temple in Mumbai this evening, then meets with Aditya Thackeray. A key meeting between Mamata and Sharad Pawar tomorrow. From Elon Musk to Sundar Pichai, shout-outs for the new Twitter CEO. At 37, Parag Agarwal is the youngest top CEO in the top 500 countries, beating Mark Zuckerberg. He's also now part of the India Club at global tech firms. IIT Bombay congratulates Parag. Corporate India applauds. Our lead story tonight, well, India gets ready from midnight today for curbs at all airports on international travellers from nearly 60 at-risk nations. Here's the latest report from correspondents from across the country on what's happening and what this actually means. The big changes in the new SOP if you arrive from an at-risk nation at an international airport is that you have to test at the airport, wait for your result, and even if you're negative, you then go to a home quarantine or a hotel quarantine.
International airports around the country lining up chairs, preparing to test hundreds of passengers at a time, starting midnight. No passenger can leave until their RT-PCR test result is out, which can take up to 4 to 6 hours. Anybody who tests positive will be shifted to hospitals and their samples sent for genome testing for Omicron. And the rest will be sent for a mandatory 7-day home quarantine in Mumbai.
कंट्री के है RT-PCR पॉजिटिव भी आती है आएगी तो जीनोम सीक्वेंस की भी टेस्ट होगी. ओमिक्रॉन का जो डर लग रहा है वो होना नहीं चाहिए. हर एक पैसेंजर सेल्फ डिक्लेरेशन देगा कि वो कौन से कनेक्टिविटी कंट्री में जाके आए हैं.
Chief Ministers of Delhi and Maharashtra, which have India's two biggest airports, have asked the centre to ban international flights.
भगवान करे कि ओमिक्रॉन वायरस इंडिया में ना आए. अगर वो आता है तो एक जिम्मेदार सरकार होने के नाते हमारा फ़र्ज़ है कि हम अपनी सारी तैयारियां पूरी कर लें. तो आज मैंने सभी विभागों के जो भी संबंधित विभाग हैं उनके साथ मीटिंग की और उससे निपटने के लिए जो तैयारियां करने की ज़रूरत है उनका जायजा लिया.
In Delhi, COVID positive passengers will be brought here to LNJP hospital, now designated for Omicron cases.
We have made special preparation. We have had the separate isolation ward, treatment ward, and at the same time we are training our staff to handle with such the cases. We have lot of international travelers, so if any cases are referred to us to the Loknayak, we can handle such cases, we can isolate them, we can treat them, we can do the gene sequencing. Our hospital is competent enough to deal with such different type of viruses.
Delhi is beefing up health infrastructure, 63,000 beds, creating a 2-month buffer stock of essential medicines, a storage capacity of 442 metric tons of oxygen, 3 refilling plants that can refill 2,900 metric tons of oxygen. The centre has advised states to allow physical visits by state officials to homes of passengers from at-risk countries for effective home isolation, and to implement emergency COVID response package with focus on rural areas and children, and early implementation of sanction, oxygen plants and cylinders, drugs, etc. The centre has also said that Omicron variant can be detected by both RT-PCR and rapid antigen tests.
The emergence of Omicron variant of COVID-19 has come out as a major challenge to the entire world and a grim reminder that the virus is still present and a threat to the entire humanity. And while the healthcare workers are working on war footing to prevent another wave of COVID-19 in the country, it is also a responsibility of the public to adhere to COVID-appropriate behavior. With camera person Sushil Rathi and colleague Parimal Kumar Sinha, Akshay Dongre for NDTV.
So what exactly will be the situation at Indian airports? Vishnu has the latest update, because Vishnu, of course, the big question is how long international passengers from these nations will have to wait.
Well, it's not going to be very good news. Once you do arrive at Delhi, for example, get set for a 6-hour wait, because you will need an RT-PCR test along with hundreds of passengers who arrive with you from nations deemed at risk. This includes major destinations in Europe, for example, the United Kingdom. Now, passengers from these countries must get a compulsory RT-PCR test once they arrive. You cannot exit the airport unless the result shows that you're COVID negative. Now, it will take about 6 hours for these results to be processed. Between 400 and 500 tests can presently be processed every hour at Delhi airport. You'll be put in a special holding area, socially distanced, but hundreds of passengers nearby, that's a big concern. So let's put this in perspective. How long will a journey take? Consider this. An average direct flight from Europe to Delhi, which normally takes 8.5 hours, could take up to 17 hours if you include the time you need to spend before departure, the time you need to spend after arrival in Delhi, including customs and immigration. If you take a connecting flight, as so many do, then an 8.5-hour flight could end up being a 19.5-hour journey if you spend the time spent in transit, plus customs and immigration, and of course the test. And finally, if you've arrived on a flight from Delhi by transiting through another country and still need to take a further connecting flight within India to reach your destination, for example from Delhi if you want to go to Bombay or Kolkata, then you could end up spending nearly 24 hours before getting to your home or your hotel.
Right, Vishnu, and of course that's really important information there for all international travellers. Carry food, carry drink, be prepared for long waits, especially for senior citizens. But also, of course, that exclusive interview you had today with the Serum Institute CEO, Adar Poonawalla. And remember, of course, they manufacture Covishield, which has been the backbone of India's vaccination program. Here's what Adar Poonawalla told Vishnu. He said that we are actually now producing more vaccines than we actually use. In fact, they're also now exporting vaccines. And he said that they can produce enough vaccines for booster shots in India as well, including an Omicron-specific booster, which would be ready soon.
We have hundreds of millions of doses worth of stock in our campus. We've got, I think, close to 200 million doses, amongst all the states in India. We are producing at least 30 to 40% more every month than the current vaccination rate. Dare I say maybe even more than that. But conservatively, we're producing 30 to 40% more monthly as of September, October than we can vaccinate at the moment in people. So if the government were to announce a booster dose, we have plenty of stock. And this is taking into account the exports as well, which we'll come to in a minute.
Let's just look at how you can actually determine if a variant is Omicron or Delta. Well, apparently you can do this even with a simple RT-PCR test with the S factor. NDTV Saurabh Gupta was at Mumbai's latest genome sequencing testing lab, which is going to be used for all international travellers who test COVID positive from at-risk nations.
The pandemic has been around since March 2020, but how does one find out which variant is causing havoc or which variant is spreading faster, or if there's mutation in the coronavirus since it caused the pandemic in the beginning of March 2020? Now, Genome sequencing is the only way to figure out variants, and Mumbai has got its own genome sequencing lab. This was after the pandemic. As you can see, it was inaugurated by the Chief Minister on the 4th of August 2021. And now, of course, the lab is functioning, but it's come into focus now because of the new variant that has been discovered. Tell us a little bit about these machines and how your team here works.
This is a new generation sequencing we have with us.
This is the machine.
Yeah, this is the machine. These two machines we have with us. We at a time we can process up to 376 samples for SARS-CoV-2 sequencing in this. Genome sequencing will tell us all the genes which are present in a particular virus or particular strain of the virus which we are sequencing. So all the genes, whether it is RDRP, so any changes or any mutations are present that can be identified by the genome sequencing.
In the current Omicron variant, what is this S gene that everybody is talking about? What is this S gene that you're looking for?
Basically, when you look at the COVID virus, the structure of the COVID virus, there are various antigens which are present and various genes which are present. One of which is basically the S gene. We have like similarly RDRP genes are there, N gene is there, ORF and AB genes are there. So when we look at this S gene, there are a lot of mutations which are present in the Omicron, and not only the mutations are present, the RT-PCR kits with the S gene are not able to detect this virus. But fortunately in Mumbai and Maharashtra, the RT-PCR kits that we are using do not detect the S gene. So the chances of missing out the Omicron, the routine RT-PCR test is less in our setup.
Genome sequencing is perhaps one of the most important methods of fighting the pandemic, because that gives us an idea of the strengths and the nature of the virus that we are battling. In Mumbai, with camera person Sanjay Mandal, Saurabh Gupta, NDTV.
Well, moving to the other big headlines, the latest GDP numbers for Q2 of this financial year are out. And for the fourth consecutive quarter, there is expansion of the GDP. It's at 8.4%, the July to September quarter. That's up from minus 7.4% in the last years in the same quarter. Let's just look at how India's economy grew from July to September 21. Well, we can see the mining growth is at 15.4% versus 6.5% year on year. Construction growth is also up at 7.5%. Electricity growth at 5.9%. Manufacturing growth at 5.5%. Agriculture growth also at 4.5%. So every key sector has seen growth in this latest quarter.
See on the right hand side, inflation has actually been, retail inflation has been under control. Now it is very important to keep in mind that the runaway inflation during the global financial crisis happened despite there being no need for any lockdowns or night curfews. And the fact that in India, almost 50% of overall retail inflation comes from food inflation, night curfews, lockdowns, etc., have a significant disruption on the food economy.
Well, the other big political headline, the standoff remained today between the government and opposition over the suspension of 12 opposition MPs over unruly conduct during the last session. Opposition MPs say this is blatantly unfair. Though there was no Congress-TMC unity, the opposition was united in protesting the suspensions and no bills were passed today.
Opposition parties boycotted the proceedings in Rajya Sabha and protested at the Gandhi statue over the suspension of 12 opposition MPs after the Rajya Sabha chairman Venkaiah Naidu refused to revoke the suspension.
If the members who have committed this sacrilege against the House, they have not expressed any remorse, I don't think the appeal of the leader of opposition is worth considering. I am not considering it at all. Motion was moved, it was approved, action is taken, it is final.
ये जो अनडेमोक्रेटिक और ऑटोक्रेटिक बिहेवियर है, आज हमने सब मिलके वॉकआउट करने का डिसीजन लिया, वो यूनाइटेडली हमने किया है.
The government is adamant. If there's no apology, the suspensions stay for the entire session.
जिन लोगों ने हाउस में चेयर की तरफ अटैक किया, लेडी मार्शल्स को अटैक किया, पेपर्स फेंके, कॉर्डन तोड़ने की कोशिश की, जिन 12 सांसदों के नाम उन 11 तारीख की घटनाओं में दिखाई दिए, उन सब के ऊपर कार्रवाई करने की हमने अनुरोध किया. सदन के सामने मोशन प्रस्तुत हुआ, सदन ने मोशन को स्वीकार किया.
A meeting of 16 opposition parties, including the TRS, Aam Aadmi Party, Shiv Sena, and chaired by the Congress, took the decision to boycott the Rajya Sabha today. Trinamool Congress and Samajwadi Party kept away from the opposition meet attended by Rahul Gandhi. The TRS, in government in Telangana, is fighting the BJP there.
We are those who have defeated BJP, and BJP lost its deposit in all the places where they have contested against us. All opposition is all one. We are going to oppose this BJP government.
After staying away from opposition meet chaired by the Congress, TMC MPs joined the protest. The party has been taking on many Congress leaders and legislators recently.
जो 12 एमपी को सस्पेंड किया गया है उसके खिलाफ में हम लोग आवाज उठा रहे हैं। हम लोग पूरे ऑपोजिशन के साथ हैं लेकिन अपनी राह खुद चलेंगे।
Opposition parties led by Congress to meet again on Wednesday morning to decide on the future course of action as the government has refused to revoke the suspension of 12 MPs. While Trinamool Congress will also protest against the suspension, but the party has decided to stay away from any of the meetings chaired by the Congress party. With camera person Pooja Arya, this is Arvind Gunasekar for NDTV.
Also in Parliament today, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman made it clear that a draft circulated on banning digital currency wasn't the final version and that a new bill on cryptocurrency is being worked on, which will be given to the Union Cabinet soon for approval.
There is a bill being proposed sooner rather than later. Treasury benches, when the government comes with the bill, with all its nuances, and the discussion can, of course, cover all these aspects.
मगर जरूर caution देने का युवाओं को इस विषय में जो रिस्क है उस विषय में ध्यान दिलाने के लिए कदम उठा रहे हैं सरकार के द्वारा, सेबी के द्वारा, आरबीआई के द्वारा। जैसे मैंने कहा, इससे और अधिक मात्रा में वो कर सकते हैं, मगर अब हम इस कगार पर आ गए हैं कि हमारे बिल जल्दी आने वाला है।
Well, we were just reporting Trinamool in Parliament, but Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee is on her national drive, now holding meetings in Maharashtra. She arrived there this evening. She met with Aditya Thackeray and Sanjay Raut of the Shiv Sena. This is because Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray isn't well yet, and also an important political visit as well at Mumbai's famous Siddhi Vinayak temple, where she offered prayers. So an important politically symbolic visit at the Siddhi Vinayak temple. Tomorrow she will meet NCP chief Sharad Pawar, and that will be a politically important meeting as well. So it's interesting that she's meeting major Congress allies there in Maharashtra as part of a national drive, and this evening at the Siddhi Vinayak temple in Mumbai.